People ask me many a times, what's your beef with KNBR? And KNBR, for those of you that don't know, is the all sports station, the radio outlet in San Francisco. It's been there for many, many years. I remember when KNBR was very profound. It was a legacy station, like many legacy stations here that have gone into the crapper. And I've been very, very public about my lamenting the fact that KNBR has been turned into a dreck machine, worse than crap, really. And unlike the some of the mutants that work there, I've been very public. I've never hid behind a keyboard and done numerous anonymous ripping. I've been very vocal, very public. My name is out front. As I've often stated, there's nothing mysterious about who is the ripper of KNBR and their present day content. I've been very vocal, never hid, never been the coward that a lot of the people that work there are, because they take shots at me, but they do it quietly and they hide behind their computers and their little Uber driver coffee mugs and fuck with me. I do not fuck with them. I just highlight and make public the very, very outstanding abyss that they've become. And I will spell it out here. And again, I want to make it clear. My comments are on the record. My comments are very clear. There is no ambiguity about where is this coming from? It's coming from me with my name up there and very vocal. You can agree with it, disagree. I doubt many of you will disagree, and I doubt many of you will be in the middle. This is an either or, with many of you agreeing with me. But even if you didn't, I will make the case of my numerous issues with Kane. I say issues like it's not life and death. It's just stating the obvious. Let's start with a little bit of history. KNBR for years and years is the flagship station of the Giants. Up until years ago, they weren't the flagship of the 49ers. It's been now 20 years since they became the flagship station of the San Francisco 49ers. They also carried the Golden State Warriors. I remember as a kid growing up in the Bay Area, KNBR was profound. They even carried the Oakland Raiders with Bill King and Scotty Sterling and the Warriors in the heyday of the Warriors 70s, dynamics and mojo when they actually won their first Bay Area championship back in 75 when I was 13 years old, and had the great Bill King describing the action with Rick Barry as one of the preeminent scorers, an NBA Hall of Famer and all that. Al Attles is their great coach and so forth. It was KNBR that carried the Warriors. And they had great shows. I wasn't a big Frank and Mike fan, Frank Deal and Mike Clary, but they had history. And they were, people like them who did the morning, and Carter B. Smith, and God, even Ralph Barbieri. That was when KNBR was legit. When KNBR had people and vintage San Francisco Bay Area centric performers, a classic radio station. And they didn't just drop off into the abyss overnight. It takes years of dereliction of duty. But they've become now the antithesis of what they used to be. They've become utter dreck. Some of it is financial, but I'm not going to let them use that excuse. It's pure out and out an embarrassment of what they've become. And the people that occupy the seat in front of the microphone, who now make up the vast majority of what is generously called KNBR programming, is an utter joke. They know it. I sure as hell know it. And the vast majority of the Bay Area listeners who actually still listen to terrestrial radio know it, which is why KNBR has become so marginalized and ineffective, why the ratings are just awful. And even when the ratings have an uptick, it's usually because of the teams. And don't tell me, well, that's most of the case at other radio stations. No, it isn't. WFAN in New York exists beyond their carrying the New York Yankees and the New York Giants. They exist because they have interesting personalities and they have people that talk about sports and they have very interesting callers. It's not gimmickry, it's not sound effect and stupid manufactured carp. It's realness, it's real people. It has nothing to do with money or lack of in this case. They just have interesting people and they generate caller and the feedback and the interaction between callers and hosts is vital and it's genuine and it's authentic. KNBR, the hosts don't know interaction if their life depended on it. They have a morning show with the huckster, the professional shillmeister that is Brian Murphy, and Dorcas or Marcus Dupree, who got the job because he was cheap and much less expensive than the other moron, Paulie Mack, aka Paulie McCaffrey, who was there because he had a soundboard, folks. Not because of his talent, not because he could interact with Smurf, but because he had a soundboard and it was all manufactured crap. Just bear with me. I'm going to do a whole laundry list and be very specific about why KNBR has been rejected wholesale by the majority of Bay Area radio listeners. So they brought this schmuck on named Marcus, who is a robot. He's kind of like a little nothing, a computerized voice who asks the most banal questions and who is there because the guy they fired was making too much money and they brought this guy on who's nothing but Murph's little pet. And Murph is nothing special whatsoever. Murph is a professional shill who has kissed ass of various Bay Area sports and business people. And he's presentable. He's like the proper pupil who will make no controversy, make no fuss, and do the proper thing, because that's what Murph does. He's a corporate yes man who's been able to provide for his various people in his family because he doesn't do anything controversial. And he's a professional, as I say, shill who kisses the ass collectively of all sorts of people and is allowed to go behind the microphone. Marginalized as it's become, KNBR, which has been rejected and is now in the bottom barrel of Bay Area radio stations, not just sports, because it's what it's become and how degree lousy it is. Look at the ratings, folks. It's all proof positive of why KNBR is KNBR. Because when you have less talent and more shilling and people that shouldn't be behind the mic, even in these days when hardly anybody is listening to the radio, you have what you have at KNBR. The morning show is a disgrace. It's vacuous. It's undistinguishable. Quite frankly, it's just plain lousy. Nobody listens to it. Oh, a few people, because after all, we have bodies out there. They'll listen to anything. Primarily older white guys who drive trucks who listen out of curiosity because they might be a Giants fan or a sports fan and they don't turn on the FM station because of the signal or what have you. So they're left with KNBR, which is a disgrace and sort of explains why the situation is what it is. The morning show is just plain out and out manufactured carp. There's nothing interesting. It's sound effects. It's people that you don't really give a damn about somebody named a producer or somebody that answers the phone that they've devoted a whole segment to, named Young Tony, as if we gave a shit about who is Young Tony and why do we give a damn about what he learned today. We don't care about young Tony. Hell, we don't even know young Tony. And if we did, why do we have to explain to him what happened 20 years ago or 10 years ago or 25 years ago? Why? Because they don't know anything better at KNBR. And because the shill, Murphy, that's his way of saying, look, I don't know what to do. I'm kind of a punk, kind of a schmuck, but they pay me to be here. I guess I'll try to do something that's considered interesting. Well, it isn't. This is what KNBR has become. We move to 10 o'clock in the morning after the morning crapola, and we have, again, another show born out of plain economics, or in the case of KNBR, the lack of economics, because they fired the other moron named John Lund, who they paid quite a bit of money to become Greg Papa's pet, his sort of Ed McMahon, if you will, though Ed McMahon had 500,000 to the nth power more talent than John Lund. But they fired Johnny Lund and they put in a son of a frequent guest on KNBR, a guy by the name of Mike Silver, whose son got the job because of daddy. That's all. It wasn't talent. It wasn't ingenuity. It wasn't like, geez, we see an up and comer. No, they saw somebody who was willing to work for barely more than minimum wage and is now featured along the overrated and vastly unpopular Greg Papa. And they called it the Two Gregs. Well, Greg Papa is clearly not the same Greg Papa, not because he has a fucked up touchdown call when he does play by play for the 49ers. That's bad enough. Papa has become bizarre, supremely unprofound, and goes off on tangents and makes points that nobody knows about or cares about, but he's there. And he's got a willing and cheap guy by the name of Greg Silver, the son of Mike Silver, who's a nobody, who's been fired a couple of times from various outlets, nationally and local, but who made a stink and said, put my son on the air, which they did. And now they have this mass 4-hour borathon from 10 to 2 o'clock. You learn nothing, you gain nothing. It's just what it is, a show that's kind of boring and profoundly unreal and just a waste of time. Not entertaining whatsoever, but it's there by circumstances, again, largely out of pure out money, or in this case, a lack of money. Let's take the little schmuck who used to be an Uber driver and is the son of a guest, and let's put him on. And he talks and he talks and he talks. He can't shut up. Well, at least he's not Greg Papa. So we move along from that shit show to the ultimate shit show. They coined it dirty work for whatever reason. I guess they're taking something off of a show that nobody knows or gives a damn about. Dirty work. How creative. From 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. We have, speaking of daddy, we have Adam Copeland, Kopelopes, the guy that laughs every 5 seconds at his own jokes, who is there largely because he fills in lots of boxes, who is there beyond the fact, too, that he says a lot of shit, is sarcastic, kind of annoying, arrogant as all get-go, for whatever reason, I don't know. A kind of Napoleonic figure in real terms because he's kind of a short man. And I don't mean to be kind of an asshole. Just because you're short, that doesn't mean your lengthy resume, of which there is none here, is kind of lethargic, but it is. His dad is Brian Copeland, who used to be at KGO, Bay Area comedian, and who may have had something to do with the fact that they hired his son, Adam Kopelopes, or he laughs. He hyena laughs. He laughs. And he uses his race when it's convenient. but is also keen enough to use his race when he's not black. He could be white and play golf with Murph to show that he's a corporate guy until it doesn't suit him. And then he has to use the fact that he's black. And I say that, folks, with all due intent. The guy is a master manipulator. His dad can make jokes and do sorts of things, but it was his dad that was very instrumental in Kobe Cope's getting the job at KNBR, right? Brian, you did well. Occasionally, even Adam Kobe Copes makes a few salient points. Unfortunately, his arrogance and his sarcasm, his hostility towards callers is rather overt, maybe even cost him his job. Speaking of social media and aligning with various people, going out on a limb, becoming suspended when he was the token symbolic program director at KNBR, which is a joke in and of itself. But hey, they had to give a job to somebody. So they gave it to Kobe Copes. That didn't last long. And I'll give him credit. He didn't put up with the crap, with the monopoly money that they gave him, which was really insignificant. His partner, who, by the way, what a coincidence, guy by the name of D-Pop, or AKA Derek Papa. His dad is Greg Papa. Oh, another daddy. Somebody who got the job for his son. Now, he did work at another station, but largely because Daddy, Greg Papa, had a little bit of, shall we say, influence to get his son the job, who adds absolutely nothing. And he's even more arrogant and more of an asshole than Adam Copeland. And then they occasionally have a third person that nobody gives a damn about, some engineer, body, somebody that says something every now and then that makes no sense, but he's been at KNBR for 800 years, and they figure, well, hell, we can add a third voice. They call themselves, this is classic, this is really, really funny, unintentionally, the best show in America. Really now? A show also largely because they're cheap and because they fired the previous host of this particular time slot, Tom Tolbert, and they put in somebody willing to work at vastly lower wages. Maybe that's dirty work. They call themselves the best show in America. What? You're not even the best show on KNBR. The best show in America? Folks, that's what's commonly called as utter bullshit. They have no ratings. They never, ever, ever, ever are clear about the reason why they're there. Kobe Copes, Mr. Social Media, which ultimately almost got him his job lost. And the only reason why they put him back is they had nobody to fill it, nor were they willing to go that extra mile for fear of being picketed by various Bay Area radio people, of which there's not that many. The show is utterly boring. It's vastly, I won't even say overrated because it's not rated. It is 18th, folks. 18th in the market. It barely has legs. And it is there because it is economically driven. They don't pay a lot. They have modest numbers, and I'm being kind. It's there because it's there. It's not going to harm anybody, but they're losing sponsors by the droves. And it's not just them, it's the vast amount of content that is KNBR these days, a once legacy station that has been driven to daddy nepotism radio. Have a child, grow him up, and if you're good enough and influential enough, you may just get your son a place on KNBR. That's how they hire. Not because of leadership, not because of a mentality that seeks to hire talented people. Their latest program director is an utter shill himself. He likes to go to the office. He used to be a producer. His name is Mike Holler. He was a producer with the Radnich Show and travels on the road with the 49ers crew and is producer. Holler, not Mike Holler, but Mike Holler, Hohler. He took the job as the program director, which is a joke. Do you think, as somebody asked me once, if you're a program director, occasionally you have to go up to talent and say, hey, such and such, can you do this? Or can you try to do this, such and such? We noticed trying to become popular with women. Could you do this? But Mike Holler doesn't do that. He's not going to go up to Greg Pop and say, hey, Greg, can you make your theories, your analogies a little more clear? Can you talk in like real sort of realness today, present day, and not talk about the Giants baseball team and use 49er analogies? Can you talk about the Warriors and not talk about the 49ers because one is different than the other, kind of a thing? Mike Holler will never do that because Mike Holler doesn't have the power to get rid of anybody. Mike Polar, whatever the hell he is, doesn't have the juice to actually be a real program director, because when you're a real program director, you make decisions. You have to kind of think beyond the box. That's why they call you a program director of any legitimate radio station. You make decisions that may be unpopular, but you do it nonetheless because you're trying to make your client, your radio station that you're an alleged leader of, a better product. But Mike Holler doesn't have any power. He can't go up to Greg Papa. Greg Papa would look at him if he did that and say, get the fuck away from me. Who are you? He would. He doesn't know radio. He knows about as much of radio, Mike Holler, as I know of dating tips to pick up Holly Berry. I have a better chance of scoring with Holly Berry than Mike Holler is of actually doing something that would be considered constructive on KNBR and not go around going to Giants games and sitting up in the press box and eating hot dogs and looking at paper clips and basically figuratively touching myself saying, I'm the program director at KNBR. Mikey, you took the job because they gave you a few extra Snickers bars and because you were the only one who was willing to have that, albeit a symbolic post to say that you could put it on your resume that you were a program director. We know that. I didn't call you Mike Assholer. Somebody else coined that and gave it to me, but it's apt here. And I realize you got to feed the family, you got a new wife. Congratulations on the marriage a couple of years ago and all that. But the last time you had any credo was when you were the producer of the Gary Radnich Show. And even Gary, in his waning days, at least he had credibility. At least he was funny and poignant and creative. Along the days of when Ralph Barbieri was at KNBR, when they were legitimate, when they didn't have a shill in the morning who kissed the arse, as I often state with great clarity, because it's true, a Brian Murphy, who will talk about the virtues of living in the middle of fucking nowhere at River Islands, all the while having his family and him reside in Marin County, which is pretty much apropos. When Murph isn't coaching Little League, as he seems to talk about every fucking day, for which nobody really gives a damn about, but at least he's not talking about Buster Posey and putting on his jersey and talking about the fact that he's a Giants board member of some fucking charity that nobody gives a damn about either. Murph is a shill. A good one, I'll give him credit. Because without Murph, there would be Provident Credit Union or Timber Deck or a Bigelow Tea or the shit that he shills for on KNBR while he kisses ass, and not just Larry Bear, but Dwayne Kuiper and others that he could play golf with, like Kobe Copes, when Kobe wants to be a particular race that day when it benefits him. All well and good. Folks, I mentioned Barbieri, and I mentioned people like Gary Radnich, Frank Dill, Candy Chamberlain years ago, Joel A. Spivak. That was when KNBR was real. Had a guy by the name of Bill Dwyer. Look it up. Bill Dwyer was a very enigmatic, sort of a, how can I put it, grouchy kind of a guy. But you know what? He was a real guy and a real program director. And that was when KNBR was real, a legacy station that once, even the first year the Giants were on in 1979, had people like Lindsey Nelson and Hank Greenwald before they became what they are today. And don't get me wrong, I love John Miller. Not my first announcer, but close to Hall of Famer and all that, but nowhere near the ranks of a Bill King or Lon Simmons or, yes, believe it or not, Al Michaels once did play by play for the Giants. I remember Gary Park, and I miss Gary Park. Gary was the TV play by play guy for the Giants when they were on Channel 2, KTVU. And that's when you had people from KNBR do fill in, when it was very legit. But KNBR, and it's not all money related, but vastly because of it, yeah. Now they have dildo heads on KNBR. It is precisely the worst, most obnoxious, most out and out oblivious station there is. You know what? This is so apropos. I don't think I've ever mentioned this. KNBR, part of the Cumulus machine, they recently moved their offices, studios, to a building in Daly City, gorgeous Daly City, California, in a building literally next door to a funeral house. I kid you not, a funeral house, which is completely so utterly apropos of where they belong. A station tinkering on the abyss, a station dying and being what it is today. The station that once had Radnich and Barbieri and Frank and Mike and all some great, great Carter B. Smith. Wasn't my cup of tea, but at least they had Bay Area centric credo and creativity, and a morning show that at least had some, speaking of creativity, ingenuity and wonderment. And now you have garbage, manufactured bits, and of course, gazillion commercials. Not as many as they used to because the advertisers have left in droves. Now you have the crap that is KNBR with guys, Uber drivers they used to be, have now taken behind the microphone. They call it the bullpen when they're out schlumming around eating their Subway sandwiches that many a times they get because they don't have the money to pay them real wages. You have a station that frankly is just it's really, really regressed and gone into the toilet. Drek personified. Station that has more interesting shows when the network comes on, when you have real broadcasters and when you have real authentic shows compared to the tripe and crap that they put on these days. So yes, I've been critical about KNBR, but unlike the little KNBR mutants, the Ninja Turtles, who go when they're off the air, who go to their computers and write little love letters, nasty notes to Rich here, anonymously, of course, because they don't dare be public about their displeasure with me because they know I'm right. And even if they didn't know I was right, if you're going to rip into me, have the balls to identify yourself. I ID myself and I'm proud of it because I don't hide behind keyboards when I rip. I'm very vocal about that. And you can fault me, you can kick me, you can do whatever the hell you want, but I am up there. My name is there, and I stand for the record what I say and what I make charges about and what I lampoon and satirize. I don't do the anonymous crap. So KNBR, I've kicked you. And yes, I don't kick much to the other station, 95.7 The Game on FM, largely because I don't have them on because the signal where I live is bad. And when I'm in this car stereo, in the car listening to the stereo, I'm usually listening to music and not sports talk radio. But I'll give them credit. They try. And they have a morning show that is, get this, folks, funny some of the time and creative and doesn't rely on sound effects and manufactured crap that is KNBR these days with a shill who talks about living in the fucking middle of nowhere in the Central Valley when he himself resides in Marin County. So the shill is very, shall we say, unshilliness, but whenever it comes to his residing in the middle of lovely Central Valley, River Islands, have a tea to that. I'm vocal, folks, and my name is right up there. So it's all those issues. And I don't get into the inner workings of 95.7 The Game like Cumulus. Odyssey is having its own issues, but at least they try to put on a halfway decent series of shows that are not as, shall we say, refined as you'd like, but they try. They do try. And I'll give them credit for that. KNBR is just an utter disaster, a daily embarrassment. Put my name on it and quote me all you like because that's my opinion. Shared by many, but even if that were not the case, it's my opinion. Of course it is. So there you have it, my breakdown of the so-called sports leader, or I like to call them the sports bleeder because they bleed and they continue to bleed. Somehow they survive, but only because the people that they have on there, assuming they really are people and not some robot, well, they're just there because you do need bodies. AI has not infiltrated KNBR these days, but it might as well because anything would be more interesting than the crap that is KNBR 2025. Hey, I'm Rich Lieberman. You're not, but have a great, great day. And thanks for listening and watching.